Hey folks, Colin here from Sumthins Recording, and welcome back to mixing a song from start to finish. Today we're going to be tackling the drums here in this song. We're going to be mixing some drums from start to finish here today in this track, but before we dive in, if you are looking to dial in a repeatable workflow for getting professional sounding drum mixes, then I want you to go through my 3-step framework for mixing drums workshop. This workshop will walk you through the 3-step process that I use on almost every single one of my mixes for getting professional sounding drum mixes right from your home studio. It is a 100% free to watch, on demand video training, and you can get access to that completely free by clicking the link below in the video description. Now let's jump in here and tackle the drums for this song. So in the previous videos, we talked about, or the previous video, there's only one video so far, we talked about setting up the mix here. So I talked about the bussing and everything, the couple plugins that I do have running here, the effects that are up here, as well as what we have going on the mix bus here, as well as the limiter. In this video, we're going to dive into mixing the drums. There's a couple different ways to start your mixes, one of them being setting your levels, and then one of them being kind of just mixing instrument by instrument here. Depending on the song and depending on sometimes what I'm feeling that day, I'll do a couple different things. For this song here, we're going to go instrument by instrument here. So I'm going to get the drums in, then the bass, then the guitars, the keys, the vocals, and then we'll tweak everything as a package. So for me, this is how I work more often than not. I'll do the drums, then I'll do the bass, and I'll, tweak things along the way to make sure everything fits together as we add in more instruments and vocals and stuff on top, and then tweaking everything as a package. I find that works easier for me sometimes than setting levels and then going back to tweak everything while there's a bunch of stuff running. It helps me catch problems and catch things that usually slip through the cracks easier for me. So we're going to start with the kick drum here in this mix. So I'm going to pop the kick drum up to 0 there. And if you're using Studio One, the shortcut key for that is Command and click, and the fader will jump up to 0 there. So we're going to pop that up to 0. We'll zoom in a little bit here. I'm going to throw on my headphones here, and we're going to get started mixing this kick drum here for this song. So you'll see where we set the level for this, and you'll see the process for mixing the drums for this song here. It's a good sounding kick drum. Let's throw some EQ on it to begin with here. And I'm gonna bump the volume up a little bit here. So let's see about a high pass filter first. Maybe tighten up the low end. There's a little bit of rumble down there. A little cleaner. If we go further, let's see what happens. That to me feels tighter, so I'm gonna go there at 34. Now, there's not anything I feel I need to take care of frequency rise right off the bat here, so I'm gonna throw the compressor in now, and we're gonna get this going. I usually like to boost any kind of top end into the compressor, so I'm gonna do the compression first here, and then we'll talk about boosting, and low end comes later for me. Low end's usually the last thing I get in on kick drums here. We're gonna put quite a bit on now. Notice our meter's moving in time here with our kick. So for attack and release here, we're at a 3-to-1 ratio, so not too aggressive, but we're not being gentle with our kick drum here. And then attack, I like to keep my attack usually around 30 milliseconds for kick drum to make sure there's enough room for that transient to pop through and for our kick drum to breathe. I don't want to squash it. You can see we're layering on about 8 dB of compression to really hold that kick drum in place, but I don't want to neuter that initial transient and suck all the attack out of our kick drum here. The release can be anywhere from about 80 milliseconds for me to about 120. I dialed it up here to about 76, so we're sitting around that 80 milliseconds there because we have that double hit on the kick drum, and I want the compressor to let go before it starts compressing that next hit. Otherwise, it holds on, and we're going to lose that attack of that second beater hit. So one more time here, we'll see if we need to dial in any makeup gain. I don't think we need any makeup gain here. It's looking pretty good to me. Level-wise still, it didn't change too much there. And we're definitely going to get some volume back as we add in our boost here. So let's go back and see what we need to do to the top end here on the kick drum. That feels really tight right there. So I went up a little bit further to 9K here instead of the 8K. The 8K was bringing up too much of that 5K click, and I wanted something a little bit higher. So we're up at 9K here. We're doing about an 8 dB boost, really bringing in that top end punch nicely. Let's see if we need to do anything here down at like 2, 3K. That feels really solid right there. Maybe it's too much though. Let's see. Yeah, just a little bit for now. So a little bit of this 2.5 helps the kick drum feel a little bit more solid across the board, rather than just having the lows and having the top in there. And just a little bit goes a long way. You could hear how it changes the sound there. Let's pull in another EQ now. After our compressor here, this is where we're going to add our low end. I like to add the low end post compression so we're not driving the compressor with our low end. I want the low end to have all the room in the world to breathe and to bloom here. So let's get some low end. We're going to start at 80 hertz. That actually feels really good there. Only 2 dB and it's about where I want it. We're going to leave that for the moment there now, and we're going to move on to our snare drum. Same thing here. So you can see I'm setting the levels right around that -12 point on the meter here. That's usually where I feel pretty good about kick and snare. If they're sitting right around that -12 point, they end up sounding really solid in the finished mix. So that's the starting point for the level. Now we're going to throw a high pass filter in on the snare drum. So we're going to do kind of the same thing we did on the kick drum, but we're going to go a little bit too far with the high pass here to clean up all that stuff on the low end. You can hear there's already some room sound on the snare drum here. So we want to clean up all that noise in the bottom end here, and we can add some low end beef back down the road here. But let's keep working. Gonna pull in the compressor. Same 3-to-1 ratio. Right about there is feeling really nice on the snare. Definitely lost a little bit of volume, that's okay. So same kind of technique we used on the kick drum, we're using on the snare drum here. 3-to-1 ratio, so not too aggressive, but we're not, being gentle with our snare drum here. Doing about 5.5 dB of compression. Attack I sped up a little bit. Our snare drum has quite a bit of a quicker transient on it than our kick drum does, so we need to tone that in a little bit faster with our attack. The release is about 80 milliseconds here. I want it to let go pretty quickly on the snare drum. I don't want it to hold that length down because I want to hear that length. I want to hear the strainers on the bottom of the snare drum. Like I said, we're doing about 5.5 dB of compression there. Let's go back and see if we need to add anything now with our first EQ. So adding some air on the top end, about 4 dB at 9K, same kind of move we did on our kick drum, right? Now it seems like there's a little bit of a dip here between 1K and 5K, so let's take care of that. That's really making quite the difference to make sure our snare drum's not feeling really scooped sounding. We're at 2.84K here. We're doing a 4 dB boost, and that's really balancing out our snare drum across the board. It makes it feel like it has body. It doesn't feel like it's far back in the room. That's bringing our snare drum to the front and giving it that crack that it needs to cut through. Last thing we're going to check here is if we need to add any low end weight to our snare drum here. Right there, 146. And just as a final touch here, I think on our snare drum, I'm going to throw a limiter on the back end here. and make sure it's not getting too crazy. That's feeling really solid. Hi-hat here. Probably won't need to do much work here. If we can find it in the song. Maybe a high-pass filter. But I don't want to get rid of that body. Sounds good to me. We're going to copy that over to our overheads for the moment too and see where we're sitting with that. We'll mix the hi-hat in a second. Same kind of thing. I don't want to take any body away from the overheads there. Let's mix in the toms here before we get too crazy with our overheads and our hi-hat. Let's see where I got a big tom roll. Right here. Okay, so we got some sub area coming in. We're going to roll that off, get rid of the mud, and make sure we boost the fundamental. So you can see our lowest fundamentals right here around 90 on that floor, it looks like. So that's what we want to emphasize, and then cut some of that upper mid. So right around here, let's pull some of that out. And then let's boost up some of this lower area. That's better. And I don't want to pull up so much of that. That's better. Cool. That sounded a little bit tighter. Any top end maybe? Right there at 4K. And the level looks good. Sounds good. Let's mix in our overheads here. That's feeling pretty good on the drums. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to mix in my virtual room here. So this is the Bricasti Simplicity IRs. So it's a Bricasti emulation pack from Simplicity. I'm using the Room 2 Studio B. It's the close mics, and all I've done is dialed it back to about 400 milliseconds here. So it's a shorter sounding room, but it gives me that big room sound that I need for my drums to compete. So what we're going to do is we're going to send all the drums here to the Bricasti, and we'll pull this up underneath here. And I'm going to check my drums at a lower volume here as well. So we're about 6 dB down. A little bump on the kick. Got things tightened up here. It looks like I like to check at a lower volume. Sometimes it helps me get my balances a little better. So let's pull in the Bricasti now. Kind of sounding good at just 0 there, but let me show you what we got going after that. So it's pretty much just a reverb. You can use any kind of reverb and get that room sound that you want. I like using actual IRs. They're very helpful in getting a realistic sound there. Then an EQ rolling off the super lows there. I don't like anything below 200 in my reverbs usually. It just feels too heavy and too muddy sounding. And then rolling off some of the super highs so the cymbals don't get too crazy. And then with reverb, sometimes they can be too wide sounding to be realistic. So I've just narrowed it up to about 54% here. So here's our finished drum sound for the moment. And I'll bump the volume back up and we'll flip back to stereo as well. So let's do a before and after. So we'll start no processing. Got a nice tight, fat, and slamming drum sound that we can build the rest of this track around now. So in the next video, we will tackle the bass guitar. I hope that was helpful for you. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if you are ready to go a little bit deeper into the mixing drums process and you want to dial in a repeatable workflow for cranking up professional sounding drums, then I want you to go through my 3-step framework for mixing drums workshop. It is completely free to watch, and you can get access to that by clicking the link below in the video description. Thank you so much for watching today, and I will see you in the next video.